Hey, peace to the family. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism Podcast and Book Club. I am Ikemba, head writer, researcher of We Charge Colonialism. You're on mute, brother.
All right. I guess it's still at it, right? Peace, everyone. This is Frank, host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series.
Right on. And so we're going to be holding down the podcast and book club today. Appreciate everybody who's joined us, whether for the first time or you continually tune into the podcast. Make sure that you're liking and sharing, get folks on as we have these important discussions. And, all our discussions are important, but I'm truly very excited about today because of the date significance in regards to the liberation movement for Black people. It's October 15th, and this is the anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party for self-defense, founded by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale on this date in 1966. And so I definitely want to show appreciation. You see me, I got the free Huey, hoodie on. Later on today, I'll be out at Clark Park here in Philadelphia, helping out with the One Africa, One Nation marketplace, just carrying on the legacy of the Black Panther Party and the organization itself, just its legacy and the work that they had done in the 60s going into the 70s had a lasting impact. And it's really influenced me to want to go out into the community. From what I was hearing and reading and studying about the Black Panther Party, it inspired me to want to carry on that legacy myself. And so I like to think that I'm carrying on the legacy of the Black Panther Party and carrying out the, the Black liberation struggle of the 60s today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the BPP, particularly an article that was put out on We Charge Colonialism's website. So make sure that you visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org, and check out our latest article put out by Rebecca and Anthony. And we're going to look at that article in a few. But I definitely wanted to, just open it up with this appreciation and show a short clip of Fred Hampton, who is the chairman of the Black Panther Party in Chicago. So let me share my screen and then show this clip, and then we can get into our discussion. Uhuru, Conrad, thanks for tuning in. So this is a short clip of Fred Hampton being interviewed. Hope my volume's good. Let me know.
Cleaver popped up. I know very well.
You're talking a lot, and I can see what you're saying about the anarchy and the whole trip about that with the SDS, and yet, like, you and the people around you seem to be like always in danger. You could be killed as you walked out of here, because this happened to a lot of people in the Black Panthers and all the Black movements. And like, can you be sure that your movement, are you strong enough now, that are you going to go on? Is the Black Panthers if you are killed, will the breakfast program go on just on a day-to-day type level?
Last year we started 3 breakfast children program. This year we gave those 3 to the people, and they're running those breakfast children already. And people, right. Now, our whole program is geared toward educating masses of people, and that free health clinic that we have, the people in the community want to run that clinic. And after a while, we're going to give them that clinic. We're going to move on to higher levels, because we understand the difference between the vanguard and the people. We're not going to practice materialism. We're going to keep out there setting up some new examples, some new revolutionary programs that people can basically relate to, because basically people are progressive and basically people are revolutionary. We're not worried about them killing anybody. because I think that they jailed Huey P. Newton, they ran Cleve out the country, Elvis Cleve out the country, and they jailed Bobby Seale, and we got David Hicks up there now, who's very capable, most capable of running the Black Panther Party, and they can just take all of them they want to. We always want to have someone to fulfill that position, because that's the type of organization the Black Panther Party is. We don't produce buffoons, we produce leaders. Everybody in the Black Panther Party, in any type of category, he's becoming a leader. We can, our minister, deputy minister of health in the state of Illinois can run the Black Panther Party. And so can anybody in this category. So all that they're involved in is an excursion in futility. Because anybody that tries to deal with wiping out the leadership of the Black Panther Party is dealing with a time wasting. It's a futile effort to seize some type of power that can never be seized, because it's a type of flowing power, and it's a type of unending flow of this power. Every time somebody moves, we're just producing more and more people, And you know how the story goes. They had a chance if wiping out power is what got them in the mess they in now. Wiping out power is that's what's got the Black Panther Party on their asses, because they wiped out so much power. So I think they got tired of wiping out power. They wiped out Martin Luther King, and they wiped out Malcolm X, you know what I mean? And they wiped out all these people. These people were produced. So I think that in the near future, you'll see programs initiated by the government that they'll probably have the CIA protecting people like us. Because when they wiped out Huey P. Newton, Elvis Cleveland popped up, I know very well that they said we wish to God that we had kept Huey P. Newton on the scene, because this motherfucker is out of his mind.
Hey, why is it? I'm having some here we go. I was having some technical issues for a second. But yeah, that was Fred Hampton, chairman of the Black Panther Party in Chicago. Appreciate though, like what he was laying out in regards to the carrying on of the institutions, and of course, like the Black Panther Party, they suffered a defeat in the 60s and the 70s, right? Because of the onslaught of the U.S. government that came down on the Black Panther Party. But with that being said, though, because of the institutions that they built and the ideas of the Black Panther Party, we're able to carry on that tradition. Like, they didn't wipe out the Black Power movement completely, because there's still people out here carrying on the legacy of the Black Power movement. So, but with that being said, though, I think like Fred Hampton, when he's talking about wiping out the leadership and those institutions being able to sustain themselves, a lot of people, this might, scare a lot of people, but, this is when people talk about communism. Ultimately, the idea of communism is supposed to be the building of these institutions by the vanguard. But ultimately, it's to have these institutions be self-sustaining and ran by the people. Like the people, there's not supposed to be this overall dictator, or this dictatorship over these institutions. It's supposed to be the creation of these institutions for the people, but ultimately is to take your hands out of the institution and let the people run those institutions. And Fred Hampton talked about the breakfast program already being ran by the people, and that's how institutions are sustained, where, you're not dependent on or relying upon one person. So, I wanted to appreciate that. But Frank, did you have anything? I know I've been going. So if you had any thoughts on that clip in particular?
Yeah, I mean, it is great that we recognize them, we remember them, and let them know wheresoever they are, let them know that we are still here fighting on our behalf, and also we are still here remembering what it did. I mean, for everything he said in our video, it resonates today. Almost everything that they created or we created in the past, we are not controlling it. We are no longer in control of what we created. But rather, the oppressor are the one in control. Like he talked about the healthcare system that they created, but right now it was taken from them, or it was taken from us and being controlled by the same people who hated them, by the same people who incarcerated some of them. So how you going to hate somebody for an idea they created and you took that idea? So And it's kind of funny that he mentioned all these things, and it is still happening even up to today, where ideas are being created by Black people, and those ideas are not maintained by Black people and things. So we just want to remember them and let them know that we are still here, carrying on the struggle that they were born in and they started. We are still in it, and we are still carrying on the same struggle, and we remember them. So, and history is not going to make us to not remember them. We're going to remember them because that is what we are there as a Pan-Africanist, because Pan-Africanism is not just there to decolonize the mind, but it's also there to set the narrative right and not to take the narrative of the oppressor, because that's one thing the oppressor does not want for Pan-African to exist. Because with Pan-African, we keep this information, we bring out a true story, and we bring out documentary, we make our own documentary pertaining to our story, and this story we leave behind. So that's one reason too as well that the enemy does not want to see Pan-African, because Pan-African is not in any way going to take the narrative of the enemy and dare on the narrative of the enemy to carry on that narrative. That's one thing about Pan-African, and that I trust. And so the Black Panther, we strongly remember them, and they will live forever.
Yeah, like the thing too about the Black Panther Party being like with Pan-Africanism, right? And Pan-Africanism being a movement for Black power, and thinking about the and Pan-Africanism being an international movement. I think it's important to understand the internationalizing of anti-colonial movements, because it takes you out it takes you out the borders, beyond the borders of the colony. The colonizer wants you to struggle and stay within the borders, right, of the colony, because they're able to control the struggle. They're able to contain the struggle if they do that. But to make sure that they can't contain it, we have to be able to build with other oppressed and colonized, Africans around the world. And so this is what Pan-Africanism does. One thing I was thinking, like actually this morning before, we started this podcast, I had a bunch of thoughts just running through my head in regards to, institutions and how institutions are supposed to serve the people. And so the Europeans or the colonizers created institutions to serve their purpose. Colonial capitalism is an institution to serve their purpose. But there's many other institutions, whether the educational institution, the injustice institution, right? The police, all of these things were created to serve the purpose of the colony. But even when you think about Black people itself, Black people as a race, that concept of race, like that in itself was an institution that was created by white people, Europeans, to serve a particular purpose. Again, like where did this whole concept of race and Black people come from? Like I'm Black all day, Black power, right? Because we flip it to serve our purpose. We going to make the institution function for a different purpose. But when you think about the creation of Black people, and even the creation or the homogenization of African people as sort of like one people, it was to serve a purpose. Like we were all, if you African, you're Black, then you're inferior, you're an ep, all of these things, these in a particular role was attributed to that status of being Black. This was something that they would create. I mean, ideologies, philosophies, like all of these things were created to sort of to rationalize these thoughts or these the thoughts and the behaviors towards African and Black people. So this is something like, when we talk about Black power and Pan-Africanism, it's a resistance to the institution itself that was created to serve. Black people was created to serve Europeans under colonialism. And this is something I feel like we have to come to grips with. That way we're able to break the chains. We're not going to be able to break the chains if we don't understand what is our function under a European-dominated society. Our function under a European-dominated society isn't to live like free people, isn't to be free people. But the Black Panther Party is an example of a group of Africans who said we're going to organize ourselves and resist this role and this status that's been assigned to us under this colony. So it's that's why I appreciate the Black Panther Party, because they got up. They was like, you're not going to be smacking us around no more. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, so like you said, and during that time period, all these movement that were resisting, slavery, that were resisting colonization, they all have the same mindset. They all almost have the same mindset of freedom, of being self-independent, self-determined people. And that is why the Black Panther was there for, like, taking their own identity. Like, look, listen, we have to identify ourselves. We are not who they describe us to be. We are not who they look out to be. And so for anything, like you said, mentioning even about the race issue, it wasn't African people that brought about race issue or identity of black and white and brown. It was all things that was created by the colonizer to put certain people in certain category. For example, in Africa, we never identify anyone as black. Even when the so-called white men went to Africa, we never look at them to be white. We just look at them to be human. And that is why they were welcome, because if we have looked at them like how they see African people or black people, if we have looked at them in our form or in our manner, we were never going to recognize them. We were never going to welcome them or on our continent, and we were never going to welcome them to expose our culture or our way of life to them, that they took advantage of us. In fact, in Africa, we have identified ourselves based on or the language that you speak, and based on the kingdom that you live in. Like it was like the people of Dahomey. That's how people were identified. We never identify no one based on race or color, but we identify people based on kingdom. Like, for example, the Yoruba people or the Fanti people. That's how people were identified, based on the tribe they speak, because that was what identified them. Okay, that was what identified them. If they went anywhere, that was the language that they spoke. So that was how they was identified. We never identify anybody based on their culture, let's say based on their race or based on their status in society, because in Africa before the 1600, those things were not there, where you have to identify people based on certain status in society, like first class, middle class, poverty, and all of those things. Those things were created by the same oppressor to identify black people where they were on the borderland. So, I mean, they don't even ashamed of themselves. Like, how are you going to oppress people? And then you try to compare them to you. Like, it's not going to happen. If I oppress you, if I exploit you, if I take everything from you, if I strip you naked, how in a way am I going to identify you as me? It's never going to work. So you are just where you are because I strip you naked. All right. And these are some of the things that a black partner look at and like, no, we can't identify ourselves with these people because they already drawn the battle line.
Man, I wish we could really build on it. You got me a little motivated right now. I definitely think we can even deepen that more. I wanted to show before, because I know you have a story. So, but what I'm going to do is just share my screen, and then we can move into your story. This is the latest article put out by WCC. So if you go to We Charge Colonialism's website and go to our articles, the latest one put out by Rebecca Hainsworth and Anthony Jolly. These are two of our members of WCC team, students at Howard University. I got to big them up, man. Like, this is our youth that's putting in work, but they put out this article, The Black Panther Party Lives. On this day, October 15th in African history, we are again reminded why we must continue to struggle for our people's complete freedom and liberation. Today, we honor the revolutionary ancestors, Minister of Defense Huey P. Newton, and Chairman of Defense Bobby Seale, for their creation of the community-based political powerhouse, the Black Panther Party of Self-Defense. So make sure you check that out. They're going to go into the history. They go into the history, the philosophy, and the programs of the Black Panther Party. So, that's right there. Just wanted to share that with you real quick, and big up to them for producing this much needed article on this anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party. So we can transition into your story, Frank, and then we can move into the book reading.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The story that I have to bring is just a video about the newly elected Kenyan president, President Ruto. His dream that he have is a dream that we all share, and it's a dream of past president that was directly or indirectly assassinated by the West, either the United States or Europe. So he was invited in Uganda, I believe, and where he spoke, and he was talking about uniting the Eastern nation, the East African nation, and also uniting Africa, the entire African continent at large. And he was discussing how trade should be among African people, and we should stop how they call it, exporting the African resources, and we should also stop importing things that are already on the African continent and then importing it onto the African continent and so forth. So I just want you guys to listen to it. It's about 8 minutes, even if we don't have much time to discuss, but we will go through it.
Leaders present, distinguished Ugandans, and the great people of East Africa, good afternoon. First, I bring you greetings from your brothers and sisters in Kenya, both Kenyans and Ugandans and East Africans. They have sent me with greetings on this very important day while you celebrate 60 years of your independence. Congratulations, Your Excellency, Mr. President. Congratulations, the great people of Uganda. And accompanying those greetings is our commitment to our region. Mzee Museveni, as I said, is our elder. We have tremendous respect for him, and we look up to him to now work so that we can eliminate the borders that separate our people in East Africa and in Africa. It is very clear to us that we cannot share poverty and we cannot share hunger, but we can share opportunity and we can share prosperity. It is our place as leaders and as citizens of the East Africa region for us to work together so that we can transform our borders, which today stand out as barriers, and convert them to bridges so that goods, services, and people can move across this East Africa without any impediments. Your Excellency, as our elder, President Museveni, you have the challenge to lead the charge on ensuring that we bring down the boundaries and the borders and the barriers so that we can have a borderless East Africa community. We are looking in our lifetime, in the next few years, that people, goods, and services can move across this East Africa as we lead the way in ensuring that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area becomes a reality. Your Excellency, I did instruct the Minister for Trade in Kenya to work with the Minister of Trade in Uganda so that together we can formulate and sign into the guided trade agreement that will facilitate the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to begin to become a reality, and so that we can harness the opportunities for investment, for trade, and for people to work together in our region. Finally, I have a word for our business people. The business people in our region are lagging behind the policymakers. I want to ask our entrepreneurs, our business people, the investor community in our region to take advantage of the infrastructure provided by the EAC and the ACFTA to transform our region. There is absolutely no reason why food cannot be available in our region. If there is food in Uganda, it should find its way to Kenya. If there is opportunity in Kenya, Ugandans should be able to access that opportunity. I am looking forward, Your Excellency, Mr. President, to you leading us in this region so that we can truly build prosperity and harness opportunity in our region for the mutual benefit of the 300 million people in EAC and the 1.2 billion people in the African continent. Your Excellency, to our business community, today we import 1.2 million tons of fertilizer into East Africa community, while we have the raw material for us to manufacture that fertilizer and save ourselves foreign exchange and create opportunity for jobs while we manufacture fertilizer for our own use in this region.
All right. So basically, we heard what he said. Almost everything he said in there is the same thing we've been asking for, and a lot of organizations have been asking for. African people around the world have been asking for. Even yesterday, the video that we did, we was also asking the African leaders to unite the African continent in order to be able to get to where we want to get. And that is what exactly he's saying in that. And bear in mind, it was the same president that I think a CNN journalist tried to make him look ugly to go against the prime minister or the leader of Ethiopia, I believe, and that is what they do when they see, when the Western world see an African leader who is so focused and who is so focused on the issue that affect African people and want to find solution. They always make sure to undermine him, to bring him down, and to make him look ugly to go against the other African people leaders, or for other African leaders to go against him or her, because they know that the solution this guy have is a solution that will liberate the African people in the African continent. And that is what they did to Gaddafi. And the reason why I so love this video, he's fearless. And we just want to remind the African people that, or the African leaders or authority, that you have to work with this man. This man should not die in the hands of America or Europe, just how they went, they killed Gaddafi. Fight hard, work along with this man to protect this man. They killed Gaddafi, and before you guys realize that America killed Gaddafi, not in the interest of African people and not in the interest of the African continent as well. It was in the interest of the imperialists, the capitalists. It was in the interest of American foreign policy to dominate the African continent and the African nations at large. So it is unto the African authority to protect this man. This man should not die in the hands of the CIA, in the hands of NATO, just how they killed Gaddafi. work along with this man. This man have a brilliant idea and a brilliant mind to liberate Africa and to make Africa a great place so that African will not die on the Mediterranean Sea. African home and abroad will benefit a large on the African continent and for the African resources. And that is what I thought is why to bring this out, that we still have people. The only difference between he and Gaddafi is he may not have the money, the resources as to how Gaddafi had the resources to finance the AU. He may not have the money, but again, sometimes it's not all about money. It's about the unity, it's about the love, the vision, and the togetherness of the African leaders to come together to make things done. What do you have in Kimba?
Hey, nah, you laid it out, and definitely, like, I think this video is very important because, I mean, it shows that there is African leadership that has the vision to bring about African unity, to bring about the idea of Pan-Africanism or African internationalism, right? The unity of Africa and African people. With that being said, with this message that he's putting out there, this call for the integration of the African economy is going to be met, of course, with resistance from neo-colonialists and, of course, from the West. You know, that's the last thing that the European colonizers want to see is a unified Africa. And so with that being said, there's going to be propaganda put out. There's going to be a whole lot of messaging put out that's going to try to discredit this man and discredit the idea of the integration of these economies, as if it's impossible or it's going to hurt it. How could that even hurt the economy of anybody's economy of African people, right? But there's going to be talk about how it can hurt a country's economy by, you know, integrating their, you know, Nigeria integrating with Ghana, or, you know, Ghana integrating with Sierra Leone, how this may have a negative impact. There's going to be a whole lot of propaganda. So this propaganda campaign has to be met with resistance. And so we have to show our support in the diaspora, on the continent, of the idea of integrating the economy. There's no way, as he raised the contradiction in regards to them having resources on the continent of Africa, but they're importing things that they shouldn't need to import. They have everything that they need on the continent. So it shows a serious contradiction. But when you don't control the political economy, then that opens the door for someone else to come along and be able to tell you how to run your economy and dictate how you should live. When you control the economy, you control your resources. You don't have to answer to nobody. The resources is how you live. That's food, clothing, and shelter. You know, where does that come from? That comes from the resources that you have. Africa has all of the things that they need for food, clothing, and shelter. Why do they need to go anywhere else? The only reason they need to go somewhere else is because somebody controls the resources on the land that they live. So a serious contradiction, but I appreciate you bringing this story so our people can see that there is a push, even on the continent, for this idea of a united Africa. But yeah, you know, just wanted to raise that. So, is this the sister who wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think she want to come up. Okay.
Hey, peace. Your balance in the chat.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Yeah. If you wanted to make the people aware of what's happening, go right ahead. You're actually, I'm gonna say this. You're the first person to ever join our screen.
Oh, thank you.
So I appreciate you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to mention that today they're having a rally in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, and for Grass J, who's been who's been accused. Go ahead. Oh, I'm getting like a feedback. Maybe I got. Yes, sir.
Yeah, no one's speaking. You're the only one that's speaking.
Yes, sir. And actually, what I was saying, that they're having a rally. I believe the organization that Al Sharpton is part of, the NAACP, I'm an INFACT supporter. I seen Grandmaster Jay in Lafayette, Louisiana. And he had a rally down there. It was very interesting. But he was just basically speaking about how, as Black people in America, as we're speaking about colonialism and how they brought us over as the workforce over this colony in the other prison colonies around the world, that at some point treated in this manner, or nobody's going to be happy. That's just how that's just nature. Things have to be within a just balance. So yes, Grandmaster Jay will be going to court in November also. He has two charges: a federal case and a state case, and they're both in Kentucky.
And what's the date? You have a date on it?
I don't want to give the wrong date, but I'm thinking it's November 9th, which is I believe, the federal case. But I don't want to give misinformation, really.
Okay, but look out for something in November.
Yes, sir. There's a website he has up. It's Operation Bring Grandmaster Jay Home.
Are you able to put that link in the chat?
No, sir, I don't have it right now.
All right. So we'll try to get that link and put it in the chat. We'll try to get somebody on it right now. And but appreciate you coming up and bringing this to light.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
Indeed.
Black power.
Black power.
Yes, sir.
All right. So appreciate that. We're going to try to get that link in the chat for all of those people who want to be informed, stay up to date on what's happening with that case. That was what has been like 2 or 3 years. I remember when the whole situation happened. He's supposed to have been threatening by pointing the gun in the air, threatening a law enforcement agent. But we know what that had to do with. What all that had to do with. He was organizing a movement of resistance and defense within the belly of the beast. So definitely, let's stay up to date on what's happening with that case. I'm glad you brought it up because I'm not going to lie, I wasn't even sure where the case stood at this particular time. And so and that's what happens. Sometimes we forget what's going on because it's not in the news and it's not in front of us, right? So yeah, we have somebody that's on that link. We're going to move to the book club or the book reading portion of this podcast. We're reading chapter 8 of a Pan-African history. I'm going to put it on the screen, but those people, there's a link to the book in the description to our drive. So it's a Pan-African history, Pan-Africanism, a history, chapter 8, Black Power. Page number 163 for all those people who have the book or want to read along with us. But I am going to share my screen so folks can read with us as well. Again, make sure you liking and sharing this podcast. Get folks, to be a part of this discussion. We're also going to be expanding the book club to a WCC book club also outside of the podcast, and everybody is invited. If you're interested, make sure you become a Patreon member because it's going to be open to our Patreon members. That's a way that you can support us, and you can come and be a part of a larger discussion with the WCC family as we go through these books a lot more thoroughly than just on Saturday when we're reading particular sections. So the next reading we're going to be discussing Amilcar Cabral. So you definitely want to be a part of that reading and discussion. So I'm sharing my screen. We're going to get right into it for the sake of time. So this is Black Power, chapter 8, Pan-Africanism, a history, origins. The return of Pan-Africanism to the African continent and the upsurge of anti-colonial struggle leading to political independence also had a major impact on those in the diaspora and therefore an influence on the ongoing struggles against racist oppression and for liberation and empowerment in the United States, the Caribbean, and elsewhere. At the same time, disappointment in relation to the slow pace of transformation during the early years of neo-colonial independence in Africa and the Caribbean led to a search for new means of empowerment. It was in this period that new forms of Pan-Africanism emerged that self-identified or came to be viewed as part of a global struggle for Black power. The actual derivation of this term is debatable, but it emerged within the United States, denoting a movement for racial solidarity, cultural pride, and self-determination. One of the first to popularize the term was the African American writer Richard Wright, who used the phrase as the title for the book detailing his 1953 visit to the Gold Coast to view the last stages of anti-colonial struggle under the leadership of Nkrumah's Convention People's Party. However, some have traced the concept of Black power back to Marcus Garvey and beyond, while many of its key elements, especially the demand for self-determination and self-government, can also be found in the Pan-African demands of communists in the 1920s and 1930s. Others have pointed to the importance of African-American activist Paul Robeson, who in 1958 wrote of the need for Negro power in the context of a changing global situation where the colored peoples of the world are moving quite independently. He concluded mass action in political life and elsewhere, and is Negro power in motion, and it is the power to win. Evidently, the Bandung Conference in 1955, the growing national liberation struggles in Asia, and the emergence of the People's Republic of China, the revolution in Cuba in 1959, as well as the emergence of what came to be referred to as the Third World, also had a major influence on those seeking Black power. What is clear that in the United States, there were several antecedents contributing to the emergence of Black power, including the activities of individuals such as Robert F. Williams, 1925 to 1926, and influential activists of the NAACP, broadcaster of the Havana-based Radio Free Dixie, and author of Negroes with Guns, published in 1962. Cultural workers such as Lorraine Hansberry, 1930-1965, Rosa Guy, 1922 to 2012, and Maya Angelou, 1928 to 2014. And organizations such as the Revolutionary Action Movement and League of Revolutionary Black Workers. There's a lot to say. Let's just stop there for a second before I move on, because I want to appreciate the history or the context of even the Black Power movement. Because when we associate the Black Power movement, we associate the 1960s movement with the Black Panther Party, the Republic of New Africa, and many others. They mentioned the Revolutionary Action Movement as the Black Power movement. Here they're giving a little context of how this concept of Black Power wasn't new. It wasn't something that just popped up in the 60s. It has its root or origin in this movement that goes back. I think, you can even go back further to the resistance movements with Nat Turner, David Walker's Appeal. These were calls for Black power, so there's this Black radical tradition that we do have in regards to our people attaining power under the system of colonial capitalism or European domination. And so, I just, appreciate them giving this sort of context of actually like where Black power came from. Such folks as Robert F. Williams, man, you think about Robert F. Williams of the NAACP. He's one of the people that Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale talk about, since we are talking about the Black Panther Party today, as someone who was influential in the development of their organization and their idea of self-defense. Of course, there was Malcolm X, but even, prior to Malcolm X, because I think that Robert F. Williams began to influence Malcolm X to talk more about self-defense, because Robert F. Williams in 1958-59, he was organizing Monroe in North Carolina, organizing them into self-defense units to defend themselves against the racists and the Ku Klux Klan of North Carolina. So he was on it, and so that book Negro for Guns, I want to recommend people pick that up. But Frank, did you want to add anything in regards to this section?
Yeah, sure. Just to add on that, this chapter also bring out the immense contribution and bravery of people that came after us, that fought for the liberation of Africa and even the African continent at large. And one thing that they did, they mentioned about Black Power during that time. Even up to today, when you talk about Black Power, most folks think that when you say Black Power, it means you're trying to neglect or reject certain race, and that is not what Black Power is for. In fact, during that time period when you heard the term Black Power, it was never in a mood of hating anyone or identifying anyone based on his race or identity or his or her affiliation or ethnicity and so forth and things. Black Power was just during that time period where it just identify African people to be themselves, for self-determination and to gain independence and to liberate themselves. Black Power at that time accepted the notion that white only, black only. So these were organizations at that time that was like, okay, say you want to be yourself, white only and black only, we take the challenge. So we're going to be ourselves and be to where we want to be. And the moment African people at that time began to do it, to empower themselves, and that is what Black Power is for, empowering African people, empowering Black people, and not to see themselves as substitute or as subject to any race or as slave to any race or as subspecies to any race. And that is what Black Power is for, okay? But once they saw themselves that way, and the people that said separate, black only, or white only, they didn't like the idea and they start going against them. And one thing I also want to mention is that even the liberation, the so-called independence of the African nation also started from here. Started from the diaspora, the movement, the power, the bravery, started from the diaspora here. And then even trained, Nkrumah, then where Nkrumah saw other activists and worked with other activists here, and he was able to move on the African continent to carry that ideology, that bravery, and so forth and things. So that's the power. That's the power of African people worldwide, not only in the diaspora and not only on the African continent, because that power is centered around the same struggle of Black people everywhere. Black people everywhere faces the same struggle. If you go to the African continent, the same people that put African people in the situation that the African on the African continent are facing, it's the same people that put African in the diaspora in that same situation. If you go in Australia, it's the same thing. You go to UK or to Europe, it's the same thing. Everywhere you go, it's the same people. And that is what Black Power is for, to recognize our struggle, to recognize our people, and to liberate our people and ourselves. That is what Black Power is for.
Yeah, I unite with that. And, again, like going back, because it reminds me of something that I mentioned earlier in regards to, status and roles and what Black meant to white people when they developed this whole idea of race, and creating this institution of Black to serve a particular purpose for them. And so when we don't look at it as an institution, we kind of we operate sort of just like frivolously, no direction, no objectives or goals, but every institution should have an objective or goal. Like, what does it mean when we say, Black people? Like, what does that even, if you're a part of a group that is considered Black or African, then what is the goals of and objectives of that group? Right? It's something that you have to really think about. If you don't have no goals and objectives, then that means that you have been created by someone else and they have goals and objectives for you, whether you know it or not. And so when we talk about the Black Power movement, this is people who in this movement, they're saying, hey, we're Black people and this is what it means to be Black. And this is our goals and our objectives. We now have a Black agenda. People are just walking around, I'm Black and I'm proud. What does that even mean? Like, I'm Black and I'm proud. I'm proud to be Black. And you're not a part of an organization or anything that's trying to bring, a nation into fruition. Because every group, of people, should be independent, should be able to be self-determined. not under the domination of any other group. So I think that's very important. And
Yeah,
what made
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, let me just respond to this comment. I love it. Dale said, I remember when Kwame Ture, then Stokely Carmichael, gave that speech on Black Power. It scared the living hair out of a lot of white people when they saw it on the news. And let me add to that. The reason why they were afraid, the reason why they got scared is because their attitude of white power is oppressive. Okay? White power is oppressive. White power is racist. White power is exploitative. White power, is dehumanizing other people. Okay? White power is negative. White power is satanic. White power is white supremacy. All right? So when the whole African people talking about Black power, all they fear it was going to be as the same way white supremacists look like. So they fear that they were going to go into captivity. They were going to be enslaved by Black people. They were going to be colonized by Black people. They were going to be tortured. They were going to be raped by Black people the same way they treated Black people. So that is why they were afraid. So whenever they see the unification, the unity of Black people, they get afraid. And these are the things they are afraid of. And that is why J.A. Hoover said, the greatest threat, the most greatest threat to white people, even though he said America, but that's the facts. What he was trying to say is the most greatest threat to white people is Black unity, is Negro unity. That would be the most biggest threat. So that means if African people unite in their mind, we're going to ill treat them the same way they ill treated us.
Hey, you said it. You said it right there. I'm gonna try to get one more paragraph in, man. It's just too much to build on. All right, so because he's going to talk about Kwame Ture in the next paragraph. So the promotion of the phrase, guys, the promotion of the phrase as a political demand is usually associated with Stokely Carmichael / Kwame Ture, 1941-1998, a Trinidad-born activist who emerged as a leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, in the United States during the Civil Rights struggle in the 1960s. Ture used the term during a speech in Greenwood, Mississippi in June 1966, telling his audience, the only way we're going to stop them white man from whooping us is to take over. We've been saying freedom for 6 years and we ain't got nothing. What we're going to start saying now is Black power. According to Ture, the call for Black power was nothing new. We've been talking about nothing else in the Delta for years. The only difference was that this time the national media were there. He subsequently explained that in practice, Black power in the United States would mean African Americans taking over the government of those areas where they were a majority, and that such Black power will make Negroes proud of being Negroes. In this regard, there was nothing that was fundamentally new about the concept of Black self-determination, meaning self-definition as well as empowerment, and the necessity to reclaim our history and our identity. But the use of the slogan came to be seen as signifying a more militant phase of the civil rights movement, as well as a cultural renaissance that was later summed up in the phrase, Black is beautiful. It also signaled a reclamation and growing usage of the term Black, hitherto generally viewed unfavorably to self-describe and denote those of African descent. So just right there, going back to the idea, the concept of Black, like there was a time, right, where you still have people today, but there was a time like Black used to, you call someone from the Black community or African American community Black, and it's probably even outside of America, right? But that was looked at as something offensive because what Black denoted, like what did it mean to be Black, right? Black was ugly, inferior, all of these, different connotations that came with being Black that people, Black people wanted to resist the term. And then in the 1960s, now you have Black people, African Americans wanting to identify themselves as Black. Black is beautiful and proud to be Black, as I just mentioned before. But why is that? What had to do with that change? Now being black was being attached to a movement of liberation. Prior to that, it wasn't. It wasn't. Again, it was the colonizer who was defining what black was and the role of black people. Your role of being black was being a second-class citizen. Nobody wanted to be a second-class citizen. So now when black became a term used for revolutionary purposes, for self-determination, now everybody want to be black. Just think about that. But Frank, go ahead if you had any thoughts on that.
I mean, you just said it, why now? Why change it? Why accepting, why you want to be black? Why you want to look black? When it was never. And some of that answer can also be is because African people have realized the importance of being black. Okay, African people have realized the importance of being black. African people have realized, what black is to the world. African people have realized the influence, the importance of black to the world. And the more African people accept it and want to see themselves as African, as black, even before then, in Europe, in the Western world, during that time period, or even recently, as we can say, the 21st century, nobody want to even identify themselves as African, But now, even in the Western world, as we speak today, they want to be African. They want to identify themselves as African because they are seeing the importance of Africa, the African continent, and black nation. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. And the more we keep African people keep running away from their identity, and then the oppressors are even coming more to identify with the identity we are escaping, we are running away from. And one thing I want to say here, folks, most of the time, if we see someone hating on you, it's not because you are doing the wrong thing or you are not the right thing. Sometimes someone hates on you because you are doing the right thing and you are the right thing. Okay, so they can be like you. And if people most of the time can be like you, they will try to make it look ugly, to hate yourself in order for them to feel good. And that is what happened between the white and the black. But it is, I would say fortunate for them. They want to identify as black. They want to identify as African. Again, it is unto all black people to know who we are and where we stand.
Yeah, Ashe. Again, like appreciate everybody who tuning in and joining this discussion. And we got caught up in this particular this chapter on Black Power. Yeah, because it's like, I think this is still it's so relevant, right? It's still relevant because we're still part of this fight to liberate Black people. And so, you have to be passionate about this particular discussion because we're living this life, as Black people, as African people. So I want to appreciate everybody for joining in. I think we need to pick back up on this chapter next week, but we are going to be transitioning to our next book. I just want to give you the title of this book in case folks want to get on it and get the book. It's Resistance and Decolonization. It's Resistance and Decolonization. So Amilcar Cabral, we're going to be looking at his readings in a couple of weeks. And we're also going to be taking the book club off of, we're still going to be doing the podcast, but we're going to be expanding the book club on Telegram. And so folks who want to be a part of the larger discussion with the WCC family as we, do this political education and go through these books in its entirety, make sure you become a Patreon member. You can do that. There's a link in our description. It's also a way that you can support our think tank so we can continue to do this work. We are a research-based organization. So we're, looking to do the work to decolonize the minds and the bodies of our people. And we need think tanks are very important. If you just think about like what revolutionary think tanks that have a large influence in our community, what are they? what exists. There's not too many you can think of, and this is because we haven't invested in having these think tanks in our community. So when we think about public policy and all of the way that people think, the education, that the curriculum, all these things are influenced by what these think tanks, research-based organizations are putting out. They're influencing the people who are in positions of power to think and behave in a particular way. And so, it's up for us to be able to influence the masses of African people so that we can resist these colonial ideas and colonial institutions. We are an anti-colonial institution. So with that being said, I want to appreciate everybody for joining. Frank, you had any last words?
No, not really. My only last one is Nkrumah said he came late. You are never late, Nkrumah. In a revolutionary struggle, you are never late. All you need to do is go by and listen to the recording.
The struggle continues. The struggle.
Yeah.
Boy, hey, never. They gonna make sure you're not late. They stay on you, boy. So, but appreciate you still tuning in. Nakushikuru. So appreciate everybody. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel. Make sure you share our channel too. If you think that we're putting out some important information for our folks and that we serve a purpose in the process of decolonization and the liberation of our people, then make sure that you let other people know as well, so that they can be a part of this much needed discussion. So again, with that being said, next week, Frank, you're hearing this for the first time, but next week we're not going to be doing the podcast. I'm actually going to be part of a lecture series, Africana Studies lecture series. So I did not share a link to that, but if you follow us on Instagram, I'll make sure that I post that series so that you can tune in. It will be virtual. And so the topic I'm going to be discussing is colonial education. All right. So make sure you tune into that next Saturday. So that being said, now, peace. Thank you all. Uhuru, Vanguard up. Appreciate you.
And don't forget to
subscribe. Always tuning in.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Don't forget to subscribe. Peace.